Welcome to the Wally Show Aftercast, all the things that we did not get to during the course of the day today. I'm going to jump right in here with something that, like somebody that I'm kind of supporting, but I know it's probably not popular to because of woke culture and everything. But there was an article about Chris Harrison from The Bachelor. I always thought Chris Harrison got a really bad deal on that. Do you remember that? He was the host of The Bachelor.
Feels like it's been forever since that happened.
I know. And we actually were talking about this last night. My daughter's home, and we were talking about, is there a new season? I don't even know. I think it's all online now. It's streaming. It's not on network TV. I think so. What? Yeah, it's what we were talking about. But so remember, there was a girl who had pictures surfaced of her in her college at a antebellum type ball, like the big Southern ball gowns, the Southern Belle kind of ball gown dresses. And so that has the connotation of a time in this country with slavery. And so there was this big brouhaha against this girl, and people were coming out and bashing this girl, and, oh, you're a racist. And she's like, I'm not a racist. It was a theme party we went to, and people go, well, you're not doing the work. You're insensitive. You're white privilege, blah, 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 blah. So everyone goes nuts on this girl. Well, Harrison's interviewing her, and he's trying to show compassion for her, because she's crying. She's been beaten up on. And so he kind of alludes to something of like saying, oh, well, maybe it was just a moment that you were on. And he suggested that the internet went crazy about it. And, it wasn't that bad of a thing is what he was kind of alluding to. And then the backlash on him, because, again, I think he was trying to be kind to this girl and not vilify her further. And then the backlash on him, it ended up getting him fired from the show that he was hosting. I think he was an executive producer on it and stuff as well. And he just got leveled. And so it was, it was back in 2018. And so he kind of came out and said, man, it kind of wrecked me. He talks about, he says, I lost 20 pounds. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. It was just one gut punch after another. Mentally and physically, I deteriorated pretty bad. He says, Harrison doesn't really blame anyone but himself, though. I was embarrassed and mad at myself. I was disappointed in myself, because you have to say that. Again, you have to do the penance. You got to do the work.
It's like a check. There's like a checklist for getting back into people's good graces.
Exactly. I've done the work. I realize you just have to fall on the sword. And unfortunately, I don't think that that's fair either. The last thing in the world I ever wanted to do was be an agent of anything negative, whether it had to do with race or anything. And so after leaving the franchise, he stepped away to get his life back. And so, yeah, it was just a thing that messed with him. There are other people in the course of life that I'm like, yeah, you got kind of a raw deal. I think Tim Tebow got a raw deal in the NFL. And I don't know as much about sports as you do, but he went from coming in and moderate quarterback. I mean, he should have been a second or third string quarterback somewhere. And he's gone. Just because of his off field faith and things like that, I don't know why people vilified him. Now, Gavin, you're smiling because you know way more about sports than I do.
think he was terrible. I think that in terms of the modern NFL, he had one stint that was actually successful, right? But that guy was not good,
right,
at the NFL style quarterback. So
you don't think he could be a second or third string quarterback?
I think that probably it's a tough conversation, because if you have him as a third string quarterback on your team,
right,
the guy's not doing anything. I think that you probably do benefit from a guy like that being in your locker room,
right.
But there
are super positive.
But there are a very low number of spots on an NFL roster, and a lot of times teams don't necessarily even carry a third quarterback into the actual game, and therefore he'd be what you'd say is on a practice squad,
right.
And so he's not even close to touching the NFL, and I don't know if he would personally want it. Maybe they'd want that to be the case. Maybe he could have been a third stringer in a lot of ways, but that might have been a point when he decided to leave, because I actually don't know the story on why he was gone. I don't 100% know if it was because they didn't want Faith touching the game.
I don't know that it was so much Faith touching the game, we have a bent against Christianity, but he became more known for that stuff. And some people, I had heard it overshadowed, and teams didn't want the him being the celebrity, and knowing that he's not like a great quarterback.
Sure.
And so they didn't want that celebrity-ish kind of coming with it. That's what I had heard.
Okay. I don't remember because that was a good almost, it feels like it's been like almost a decade since that happened. And then he did try to come back 2 years ago, and he played as like a tight end for the Jaguars in practice, but then he was really bad at that too, and so he got cut. It's a tough world.
He tried baseball.
Yep, didn't work out because he's not great at that either.
Did commentary. And
I think that's a perfect place for him to be because he's still in a place where he gets to go out there. Because I can promise you this: if Tim Tebow had been on the same show that the guy from ESPN played on, Tim would have been just like right there, and then it would have been like a part of the daily program.
Right. I think what was so cool about the guy praying for DeMar was that it was unexpected. Because Tim, you would expect it. Oh, Absolutely. Yeah, of course Tim's going to do that, And so I think that's what made that other moment like, whoa, okay, I like it. And I think that guy's prayer was so good and so honest and not scripted and rehearsed and things like that. I thought that was really good. But yeah, it's really hard to come back from certain things and certain allegations of, especially when it comes to race, allegations of race. It's really, really, really. It's really, really hard to defend it because the more you defend it, the more you look like it, and B, it's really hard to come back from it. And people just have to fall on their own sword and be like, I'm a horrible person.
If Chris Harrison, for example, was gonna try and come back as a part of the Bachelor series, you'd still have so many people who are like, how dare you let this man back on our television?
Oh yeah,
even though he probably maybe he did put the work in.
But then Paula Deen, she got nailed for some stuff back in the day, and she kind of came back-ish. What's her name? That's friend of Snoop Dogg, Martha Stewart. Yeah, where she went to jail and she did come back, but going to jail for tax fraud is way different than race stuff.
Yeah, it's like that's your fault, not like you hurt people.
Yeah, I get that one. This was a really interesting story out of Ukraine. Obviously, the war in Ukraine is still going on, and it's still nasty. But did you know that there are more than 50,000 women who are enlisted in the Ukrainian army? Men serve, and I think men have had to serve and have been called up to serve. But they have actually had 50,000 women that are in the army, and they are actually fighting, not just support roles. There's this one lady, Eugenia Emerald. She is a sniper, and they are calling her the Punisher of Russians. That's big.
Dang.
Yeah, that's big. That's a lot. That's big shoes to fill. Or they're also calling her the Ukrainian Joan of Arc. Like the legend grows, because apparently she's kind of good at it. Like her dad taught her to shoot when she was younger, and it was something she kind of wanted to do. And
it sounds like a movie.
Yeah, it really. I'm telling you, there will be. There's got to be. She's got an 11-year-old daughter at home, and so I mean, not an easy decision.
No.
And then she's fighting kind of not only the Russians, but then the internal politics and the internal perspectives of people in the Ukrainian army. Like the men don't really want women in there fighting and things like that. And I remember I got taken out a few years ago for saying I didn't want women fighting, and we had this big debate about it, and they're like, you don't think women can do it, blah 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 blah, you're a misogynist. I'm like, no, I think they can, I just don't want them to, like I don't want anybody to be fighting, but they're like, you're holding women back. I'm like, no, I'm actually trying to respect women and put them on a higher, more valuable plane and say, man, I hate that you would get drug into this. Can you do it? Absolutely. Should you do it? Should any of us do it? No. But it was like out of my utmost respect. I wouldn't want my wife fighting, like
your daughter.
I want them safe. And so, but there are people, man, that came at me and were like, "You're just the worst, and you're holding back." I'm surprised, but the good news is I've done the work, and now you know what, women, go shoot each other, go crazy, go shoot whoever you want in the war. No, I don't. No, I still don't believe that. I still am not a fan of that. You see the stories of women that are captured and things like that in different skirmishes around the world, and it breaks my heart actually, and it's out of a respect. I still hold doors for women. How I was raised. You respect them, you revere them, you treat them well. And Betty knows what that's like. Here, I treat her well. Yeah.
Not a very overwhelming.
Yeah. I actually signed Betty up for the Ukrainian army.
Oh, cool.
Last week. So see ya, Rock. It's fun.
Grab a sniper.
Lady Rock, what do you got? Do you got that story I want?
Nope.
Oh, come on, about Gwen Stefani?
We don't need it.
I really want to do that one.
No, you don't.
I do.
No, you
so
don't.
Bad.
No, you don't.
Okay, back my whole conversation I just had about respecting women. This is my thing. I'm trying to save you from yourself. You have bumped this one story a bunch of times.
I know.
I know how the story ends. People, potties are like, finally, we're getting to the story Betty Rock wants to do. This is going to be amazing. And then it's not going to be.
No,
I'm saving you from yourself.
No, I'm not postponing it any longer.
Oh, okay.
No, this
Gavin, you saw me try.
Yeah.
You saw me try. You're on the front line by yourself now.
But this also doesn't mean that you can't just...
Oh, I'm out. No.
Fine. I'll just have this conversation with potties who care.
I still don't know. I could maybe care.
Gavin doesn't remember what it was.
I don't.
Truth be told, I don't either.
Wow. Okay, ultimately, this is about boundaries.
We're getting to it. Yay!
This is something that we talked about not that long ago with Lisa Turkhurst. She had written a book about it, and I had flagged so many statements that she had made in that book because I was like, I'm really bad at making boundaries with people because ultimately, I don't want to disappoint anyone. Ultimately, I don't want to make anyone mad at me. Well, I found this article about Katherine Heigl. She's an actress, and you know her from 27 Dresses. She was also part of
She was on ER, too, for a long time.
No, Grey's Anatomy.
Grey's
Yes,
Anatomy.
Grey's
Yeah.
Anatomy.
She's on a new show on Netflix called Firefly Lane, I think.
Oh.
Yes, she
I don't know
is.
much about it.
Yeah. Well, she has two daughters, Adelaide and Nale? Not sure. Anyways, she started noticing they're 10 and they're 14 years old, but she started noticing that they are already trying to be people pleasing at their young age. And she said there is this under the radar, unsaid, collectively understood vibe that women are meant to be pleasing. Please everyone but yourself. And she said that she tells them that is not your job. It's not your job to make everybody else feel comfortable, happy, safe, liked, or adored. It's your job to make sure you know who you are, you know what your boundaries are. You have to know what you will or will not put up with, and then handle that graciously. Now, I think that last statement is very important because when you say, you're telling your young daughters, you need to stand up for who you are and it's your truth. Right. That can come across as like you're only caring about yourself. You do not care about anybody else. But in that last statement, she said, you can handle it graciously.
Can I point out something about that? And I get where she's coming from. It's when you look at any issue holistically and what is said, you can pick it apart, obviously, because I get the intent is don't just serve other people at the exclusion of taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's the way you say it, at the exclusion of taking care of yourself.
Yes.
Because being a people pleaser or serving other people is not a bad thing.
No.
Like serving other people is biblical. Like and living at peace with other, it's not your job to make people happy. The Bible actually tells us where it is on you, and 9 times out of 10, it is on us, live at peace with people. And so her advice and her admonishment to her girls is not necessarily scriptural. It's very holistic and protect yourself and you're the center of your universe. But I do understand that's probably not where she's fully coming from.
But I think what I like about it is that she's saying she doesn't want to make this like a sexist thing, but there is this thing that's not really said that women are supposed to be pleasing. They're supposed to make people around them feel good.
Yeah,
whereas men can get away with more.
Right. I mean, women typically, but again, there's elements that you're wired that way in a little bit. Like you're a 9, so you're wired that way, and it's a great thing, honestly, because women are good at seeking community. Women are good at seeking peace, and things like that. And so the thing that seems like, oh, it's a negative, you're just pleasing people, is actually something really necessary in our society. And as
it can
people.
be. It's just there needs to be. We need to. As women, we need to just understand there's a healthy way to do it and a very unhealthy way of doing it.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
So I was looking at articles written on like how to set boundaries, because if you're like me, you're like, I don't even know where to begin. That just sounds scary. The common fears that keep us from creating boundaries, they include fear of angering people. Mm-hmm. I've been there. Mm-hmm. I've actually caught myself This is how I know I have problem with boundaries. I've caught myself saying I'm happy when the people around me are happy.
But again,
that's not healthy.
But see, I understand that though. Like my life is so much better when I know my wife is happy and I know my daughter's happy. When I come to work and I know you two are happy and that your lives are good, I feel good.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm energized.
Yes, but I think the difference is that those are people that you love and care about.
Right.
Whereas I've seen myself feeling that way over people that wouldn't do the same for me.
Oh, okay.
And that's where I think a problem comes in to the situation. Sure. Another reason you don't set boundaries is because you don't want to disappoint someone.
That's your big thing.
Yes. I guess unless you're Wally, then I don't care. Right. A fear of being seen as difficult or selfish. That is a big thing. Absolutely. Because I've said this once and I'll say it again. When a woman stands up for herself and says, no, I'm not going to do that, she's looked on as being difficult and hard to work with. Right. Whereas if a guy does that, they're respected.
Strong and opinionated.
Exactly. Resolute. And they're like, oh, he's a leader. Like, let's go to him and let's ask him, what he thinks. You don't want to you don't want to be looked at as being mean. And you also don't want to ruin relationships. That's a big thing for me too. One thing that keeps me from speaking up for what I'm thinking is because I'm afraid I'm going to lose that relationship, that I'm going to speak what is bothering me, and then that person is going to be like, you're too difficult to be in a relationship with, to have a friendship with, so I don't want any part of it.
You've gotten better about that, and you've gotten better about navigating that in a healthy way, honestly, and I respect it. Like, I respect you, and I think that
but you're not someone I worry about.
Right.
There's other people out there that
You worry about losing my friendship? You don't worry about that?
No.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm so pathetic. I've got nothing else going for me.
No, you're just not in the at-risk part of her brain.
Well, no, because Betty's that person. Like, she's worked her way into my heart, and like there is nothing I won't do for her.
But there are people that will take advantage of you if you don't create boundaries with them. And ultimately, I think every relationship, every friendship, even yours, mine and yours, needs to have boundaries because boundaries make it healthy. They're not meant to separate. They're intended to bring people together in a healthier way.
Yeah, and boundaries for me always were a separator. It was like, oh, well, you got boundary. Why don't you want to hang out today? Or why don't you want to do this?
Hearing somebody say that they want to put up boundaries, I feel like there are people out there who would hear that and they'd hear, oh, you want to put up walls to keep me out, which is something I don't want to do.
That's not necessarily what it means.
Sure.
Like this article that I found, it said it's kind of like how parents treat their kids. Like, of course, I'm not saying that you're the parent and they're the kid and someone you need to look down on, but kids thrive when they know what's expected, where their boundaries are, and they can do better as children. If they don't have those boundaries, then they just end up being crazy and everyone's mad in the situation. So boundaries aren't meant to punish or control other people. They aren't just good for us. They're good for everyone involved. That's very special to think about, not only for you, but for everyone. Boundaries actually make relationships easier. And when we don't set boundaries, we often become resentful and angry, which isn't good for us or our relationship. It's kind, not selfish, to create boundaries. So I came up with these tips on how to set boundaries with kindness, because this is something I like, that part of with kindness. And it's the same thing that Katherine Heigl was saying when she said you can set boundaries graciously. There's a difference between creating boundaries and doing it harshly and doing it graciously. And I don't know how to differentiate between the two. I think a problem for me is that I want peace. I want people to be happy, that I sweep things under the carpet. And then when something does bother me and that mound under the carpet is just too big and I can't sweep any further, then I explode. And that's not good for anyone.
I remember that back in the day. Like, back in the day, you would go for a long time and it would build up. And then one day out of nowhere, or something really small, it would be the explosion. And you're like, oh, man.
And the ironic part was everything I swept under the carpet all had to do with Wally.
I know. And then you'd go home and feel guilty, which I loved. Secretly, I thought that was funny.
Okay, so here are a couple of tips on how to create boundaries with kindness. The first one is to keep the focus. You're yawning.
It's been a long day.
I was up late last night. No, I know. I was up late last night.
Okay. The first one is keep the focus on your feelings and needs. In the process, it may be important to gently call out someone's hurtful behavior, but that shouldn't be the focus. So something they've done has hurt you, and you want to create a boundary saying, hey, that's not how I want to be treated. You can mention that, but don't make that the main focus, because then they're going to bristle up and it's going to end badly with a fight, probably. Focusing on what someone has done wrong is likely to make them defensive. Instead, lead with how you feel and what you need.
Because that does make sense. Like I can respect that a lot more than when it feels like the blame game as an 8, like an Enneagram 8. Like if you're like, well, this is what you did, and it, you know, and I don't like it, blah 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 blah. Versus, you know, this subtle distinction of, hey, when you did this, it made me feel like this. Like, I didn't realize.
And maybe that's not what you intended it to be,
but it wasn't.
But it does come across that way,
right? Yeah, and that definitely helps.
And ultimately, too, boundaries are a way to teach people how to treat you. Because if you're not setting boundaries, then they can take full advantage of you, and they think it's okay.
And I do honestly, like, I think that like I've always resisted them in my life. Like I always saw them as, well, you know, you're limiting what I can do professionally, you know, with you if you set these hours. Well, I'm not working these hours or whatever, you know. And I always had a problem with that with people early on, because like I work a bunch of hours, you know. But I did learn that, like, for example, you and we work differently, you know. And so I had to remember, okay, A, I respect her. B, she's not lazy, you know. And so she might work differently. Like she doesn't want to do it right now, but she'll go home and do it or what have you and stuff. And I think for me, when I learned how you work and accepted that you work differently than me, that helped me understand. And it's kind of a boundary. Like, okay, I can respect her boundaries, that she doesn't want to be bothered at 3 p.m. because she's probably napping. You know, and so I try not to call you at 3 p.m. unless it's an emergency.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Another tip is be direct. I get this. You can be wishy-washy when you're trying to clearly state what your boundary is. And ultimately, that just leads to everyone being confused. And you didn't really get your point across. You need to be direct instead and be specific. So make it easier for the other person to understand your perspective and what you're asking for. That just helps, because especially like you were saying earlier, Wally, you wish that guys could read women's minds.
Yeah.
We need to be direct with you and let you know exactly, like you were saying earlier, hey, when you did this, it kind of came across like this to me.
Right.
Is that what you meant? Kind of thing. Use neutral tone of voice. Tone of voice is very important.
Yeah, my mom used to always tell me, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. Because I can tear an argument apart, and I can pull somebody apart, and I can do it with a really, really harsh tone and stuff too. Like when I argue, there are times where I'll be recounting something from work, like an altercation with somebody or whatever, and my wife will be like, did you say it that way? And I'll be like, you know what? I don't think I did, actually. Like I'm worked up now more so. In the moment I was calmer. And then other times I'm like, oh yeah, this is probably better than I said it.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's even been times where you've said something, or even your body language, I thought that's coming across a lot harsher than what you mean.
Right.
And I've told that to you later.
Yeah.
So that you understand where someone might be coming to you later and saying, hey, that kind of bothered me. Yeah. Also, choose the right time. So don't catch them at an off time where they don't have much time. I mean, yes, that can be convenient for you when you're like, I'm already nervous. I'm just going to get them when I have like 1 minute, I know, and they're about to get out of the car. But ultimately, that's not healthy, and it doesn't help. It just brings on confusion. And then lastly, this is important. Consider the other person's needs. So this is what I was saying earlier. Boundaries kind of can come across as like, I'm only thinking about myself.
Right.
I'm not thinking about anyone else, but it's very important that you think of the other person's needs, because that's what you're supposed to. I think that's biblical. So it says sometimes compromise is appropriate. You're not the only one compromising, and that you're not giving up what's most important to you. So saying like, I understand that this is a boundary that I need in my life. I see where that can be hard for you. Let's find a compromise in some way, because then that person is feeling like they're being heard instead of just being ignored and like you don't care about their feelings. Right. You come up with a compromise, and then you both still have this relationship that's healing, and it's still there. You're not losing someone.
That's all good advice. I don't want boundaries anymore. No, it's all really good. There's something that was going back in my head back from almost the beginning of this, though. It's so funny too to see how much time you spent on this, and we kept bumping it like every day, and like now I'm like, oh, I get why you wanted to do this.
Yeah, it's important.
You did a lot of research too. Yeah. But here's a thought. I'm curious what you think about other women. Because we talk about there's a big backlash of women when you talk about being subservient, or serving your husband and things like that. Like your mom probably makes dinner for Danny Ray all the time, and we each have jobs, and your mom comes from a different generation where she probably is more, and the term subservient is really a bad term. Submissive, that's what I mean. Even submissive is like a bad term. Wives submit to your husbands, and that makes people bristle so much. I think that is a biblical concept, but inside of that, women being submissive to their husbands, I think there's an onus on the men to not take advantage of that.
And I think that's the big problem in all of it. I think when women are like you say, I don't want women to be in the army.
Front lines, yeah.
And those women were like, how dare you? Do you think that we're not capable? I would think that in their past, they have probably experienced where a man took advantage of them in that they weren't being respected. They were having to have mansplaining, where it's like a man thinks he's superior to her.
Right.
And so they got taken advantage of and got stepped on. So instead of probably coming to it in a healthy manner, they instead just bristled up and doubled down. And so any man that seems to even come across as like he's trying to be superior over me, I'm going to tell him where he needs to go.
Because if you were to ask my wife, like, what is her job? Like, she doesn't work. She is a homemaker, and and we designed it that way, like, so that she could be there for Haley. Now, could she go out and get a job? She absolutely could. She's a smart woman, and she could do well at whatever she wanted to do. But she's like, I like being here for you, and whatever you need, I like being able to go and help out when you need something, and I like being home, and like she's like, that's my role in life, and she's defining that. Like, I've never said that. I'm like, look, you want to get a job, go ahead. I would kind of like it. I could retire earlier, but
I think that's where respect is.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of relationships that aren't that way. That the man does not respect her. Instead, he expects her to
that's an interesting
be
T-shirt.
Submissive.
Yeah, respect and expect. That's a good.
And just being. I think I've told you this before. You're very good at being. What's the word? You're good at noticing things, and so you make an effort. Like, I know you do that with me and with Gavin, so I'm sure you do that with your wife and with your daughter. And I think that goes a long way, because a lot of times it does feel like men have to be hit upside the head with a 2x4 to be like, do you see how much I'm doing for you?
Right.
And I think when you as a grown man are able to look with your adult eyes and see where a woman is showing her love through work acts of service.
Right.
All it takes is for you to just be intentional and say, hey, I see what you're doing, and I really appreciate it. That goes a long way. But if you just expect it over and over, why would you want to submit to anyone that doesn't treat you right? Right,
exactly. I think there's a way in which guys submit to their wives as well. It just looks different, like we should be. We should acquiesce to our wives on different things that they're better at. We should respect that and allow and not allow that, but and respect that and appreciate that.
And that looks different for each family,
exactly.
too, like for each relationship that you do have. Because, for example, at home, Haley, much better with like the tools.
I know.
Much better with all that stuff. I probably should learn just so I personally know what I'm doing, but I don't sit there and like demand that she be the person that goes and makes dinner every night. Like, I've made dinner every night this week.
Oh, wow.
And that's just part of how.
Because he's submissive to her.
Yeah, exactly. She wears the pants.
I love it.
Yeah. I have to be careful, because when I get into a world where like I feel like at work, for example, people aren't listening to me, or they're questioning everything that I'm doing, and I'm like, I've done this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing, you know, and
you don't feel respected.
Exactly. But
or if they don't come and ask you when a decision is made that you would then have to, you know, go out and act.
Yeah. And so if I feel like I'm constantly having to, you know, fight for that, it frustrates me, because then I'll go home and my wife will second guess me on things. And I have to remember she's for me. She's not against me. Usually the things she's second guessing me on are things that are really good, like even driving, because she knows I get distracted, and she'll be, don't you need to turn left here? Oh, that's right, I'm thinking about this. Yeah, thank you. But there are days when it frustrates me, because I've come from work frustrated by not having people listen to me, and then I come home and then she's telling me what to do, and I'm like, go, you know. And I have to remember, and this is where the respect comes in. I have to remember that she is always for me, always trying to help, and that's how she shows love, is by trying to keep me from, you know, self-destructing. And you're the same way too. Like, you do a good job with me, because you'll tell me things so many times here at work. You're like, I don't want to see you implode, you know, and this is my advice to you, you know, because I know you have that ability, and sometimes you'll make an issue of something and you'll go down with the ship, and and you've told me, you know, I don't want to see you hurt yourself, you know, and I respect that. I appreciate it.
So ultimately, I think what we've learned is it comes down to communicating
that's a big thing.
With respect on both sides. But if you're not getting the respect from the person that you seem to be is taking advantage of you, that's where boundaries come in.
Absolutely.
That's where you have to create that boundary. And if they don't understand, if they get angry, that's not your problem.
Yeah,
you
that's
can't
true.
You can't heal them. They have to heal themselves.
Well, it was worth it. I think we've done some good work here today.
I sound like I'm an expert.
I know.
I'm not.
We've done some really good work here today, for sure. And
aren't you glad that I saved that?
God bless it.
It's not. You're kidding.
No, look, it's not rolling. It's not rolling. We did 30. No, I'm just kidding. It's rolling. No.
Really?
It's rolling.
Why are you the first ever? Gavin is still, he piddled a little.
No, it was one of those things where it's like, as soon as you as soon as you threw your pen, I was just like, oh no. And then, like, in my head, I was just like, oh, this is funny. So
hilarious.
Yeah, because we record all this, obviously, so I wanted Betty to think for a second.
As always.
No. That was
thank you for sticking around for this TED Talk about boundaries.
You know what?
Thanks for being a potty.
Last night was funny, like, because I always like to mess with people. So my wife, we were having dinner with Molly and Greg, and she made cupcakes. And so she had made cupcakes last week when we had dinner.
Is that why the cupcakes are out there?
Yeah, we had extras.
Okay.
So I'm like, and they're fair game. So I'm like, really? You made cupcakes again? Like, I mean, it's like, I mean,
you said that to Molly?
Yeah, no, to Marty.
Or to Marty?
I'm like,
Why?
we should do something different, you know, keep it like that, just do the same old thing. And this is where I love my daughter, because she politically has been a little different from me lately, but and more sensitive to things and more woke and stuff, and it frustrates me. But then, so yesterday I told Marty, I said, well, I'll just go buy a dessert, you know, an extra dessert or something different. She goes, well, I've already made the cupcake. She's like, don't buy a dessert. I'm like, I'd want to do something different, you know? And so we go to the store, Haley and I'm driving with her. I'm like, she's like, are you going to really buy a different dessert? I said, absolutely so. And then this is why I love my daughter. She goes, I hope you buy cupcakes. And I'm like, that is a great idea. So that's why there's another thing of store-bought cupcakes with it. Because I came home and showed Marty, I'm like, hey, I bought another dessert. I hope it's okay. And I pull out the cupcakes and she just goes, seriously?
Wow.
So good. Boundaries, don't have them. Okay. Do you want to do birthdays? Do we have anything? Are we good? Okay.
No,
sorry about that. We'll catch you up tomorrow if we do. We went a long time on this one, but really good stuff. Good
there wasn't any birthdays anyway, so we're good.
Well, it worked out great. All right, there you go. Thanks for being a potty.